You have become a master at starting things. New diets, exercise routines, business ideas, personal development plans. Your enthusiasm burns bright for days, sometimes weeks, before it quietly fades into the background of your everyday routine. You collect unfinished projects like trophies of good intentions, and each one whispers the same uncomfortable truth. You know what to do, but you cannot make yourself do it consistently. The truth you rarely speak aloud is this: you are tired of being a passenger in your own life. You are exhausted by the gap between who you know you could become and who you settle for being each day. You watch others seemingly effortlessly build the lives you dream of while you remain trapped in cycles of good intentions followed by familiar disappointments. But what if I told you that in 1963, I discovered something that changes everything? Not another technique or system, but a fundamental shift in how you relate to your own mind. In the next hour, you will not just learn about self-discipline. You will witness your transformation from someone who hopes for change into someone who commands it, from someone who reacts to circumstances into someone who creates them. This is not about willpower or forcing yourself through another temporary improvement plan. This is about becoming the kind of person who naturally, almost automatically makes choices that align with their deepest desires. The kind of person who no longer needs to fight their own mind because they have learned to master it completely. What you are about to discover has been tested not in theory, but in the furnace of real-life challenges. These principles carried me from failure and poverty to success beyond my wildest dreams, and they have done the same for countless others who decided to stop accepting mediocrity as their permanent address. The moment you truly understand what I am about to share with you, excuses will no longer satisfy you. Half measures will feel impossible. You will find yourself naturally gravitating toward the habits and thoughts that create the life you have always known you deserved. If you are ready to stop being disciplined by your circumstances and start disciplining your mind, if you are ready to close the door on past failures and open the door to your inevitable success, then subscribe now and commit to this journey of complete mental transformation. Because what happens in the next 60 minutes will determine whether you spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been or knowing with absolute certainty what will be. Number 1, mastery of the mind and self, discipline. You sit in meetings nodding along with decisions you disagree with. You watch opportunities pass by while you tell yourself you are not ready yet. You feel the weight of your own potential pressing against your chest, but you have become so comfortable with your own resistance that you mistake it for wisdom. The truth that gnaws at you in the quiet moments is this: you have handed over the steering wheel of your life to your fears, your doubts, and your excuses. Every person who has ever achieved anything meaningful discovered the same fundamental law that governs human existence. There is only one thing in this entire universe that you have complete and absolute control over. Not your circumstances, not other people, not the economy, not your past. The only thing you truly own is your mind. And yet most people treat this sacred gift like a runaway horse, allowing it to drag them wherever it pleases. When you fail to discipline your own mind, life will discipline you. When you refuse to take command of your thoughts will take command of you. This is not philosophy. This is the iron law of mental cause and effect. Those who master their minds become the architects of their destiny. Those who surrender this power become the victims of circumstance. Imagine your mind as a magnificent garden given to you by the Creator Himself. Every thought you allow to take root becomes either a flower that beautifies your existence or a weed that chokes out your potential. Most people stumble through this garden, planting whatever seeds the wind of circumstance happens to blow their way. They wonder why their harvest consists of fear, doubt, and limitation when they have been unconsciously cultivating these very things for years. But here is what I discovered. After decades of studying the minds of the most successful people on earth, your mind operates like a powerful broadcasting station, constantly sending out signals that attract circumstances, people, and opportunities that match the frequency of your dominant thoughts. When you fill your mind with images of your desires, when you speak your definite purpose like a prayer every single day, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your subconscious mind, that incredible servant that never sleeps, begins to work 24 hours a day to bring your mental images into physical reality. The difference between those who succeed and those who fail is not intelligence, education, or even opportunity. It is the discipline to guard the entrance to their minds with the dedication of a soldier protecting a fortress. They understand that every negative thought they entertain is an act of self-sabotage. Every doubt they nurture is a vote against their own success. Every excuse they accept is a surrender of their birthright. I learned this lesson when I was at the lowest point of my life, broke and seemingly without hope. I made a decision that changed everything. I decided that regardless of my circumstances, I would fill my mind only with thoughts of my definite purpose. I would speak my goals into existence every morning and every evening, imprinting them so deeply into my subconscious that they would become as natural to me as breathing. The moment you take complete responsibility for the thoughts you think, the words you speak, and the images you hold in your mind, you step into a power that most people never even glimpse. You become the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. But this mastery requires vigilance. It requires the discipline to catch negative thoughts before they take root. It requires the courage to replace fear with faith, doubt with certainty, and limitation with possibility. This is not about positive thinking or empty affirmations. This is about recognizing that your mind is the most powerful force at your disposal and that with great power comes great responsibility. The person who learns to discipline their mind can overcome any obstacle, achieve any goal, and transform any circumstance. But the person who allows their mind to run wild will find themselves at the mercy of every passing emotion, every temporary setback, and every voice of discouragement. Your mind is waiting for you to claim your throne. The question is not whether you have the ability to master it. The question is whether you have the discipline to do what mastery requires. Will you finally take command of the only thing you truly own, or will you continue to be a passenger in your own life? Number 2, the power of gratitude and prayer. You pray when you are desperate. You reach out to the infinite when the walls are closing in and you have exhausted every human solution. But between those moments of crisis, you forget to acknowledge the source of every breath you take, every heartbeat that sustains you, every small miracle that unfolds in your life each day. You have trained yourself to notice what is missing, while remaining blind to what has already been given. For years, I approached prayer like a beggar approaching a king, always asking, always wanting, always focused on what I lacked. I would kneel and recite my list of needs and desires, wondering why my prayers seemed to bounce off the ceiling and return to me unanswered. I had turned prayer into a transaction, expecting the universe to deliver based on the desperation of my requests rather than the gratitude of my heart. Then I discovered something that revolutionized not only my prayer life, but my entire existence. I learned that the most powerful prayers are not the ones that ask for what we want, but the ones that give thanks for what we already have. Gratitude is not just good manners toward the Creator. It is the master key that unlocks the storehouse of infinite supply. Think of gratitude as a powerful magnet that attracts more of what you already appreciate. When you focus your mind on the blessings you have received, you are sending a clear signal to the universe that you are ready to receive more. When you dwell on lack and limitation, you are unconsciously ordering more of the same. This is not mysticism. This is the mathematical precision of mental law. I remember the exact moment this truth became real for me. I was facing what seemed like insurmountable obstacles. Creditors were calling, opportunities had dried up, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of my own making. Instead of falling to my knees with another list of desperate requests, I decided to try something different. I began to pray prayers of gratitude for everything I could think of that was already working in my life. I thanked the Creator for my health, for my ability to think and reason, for the roof over my head, for the food in my stomach, for the people who believed in me when I could not believe in myself. As I continued this practice day after day, something miraculous began to happen. The more I focused on what I had, the more reasons I found to be grateful. The more reasons I found to be grateful, the more abundance began to flow into my life from sources I never could have imagined. This is the secret that separates those who live in constant struggle from those who seem to effortlessly attract prosperity and opportunity. Grateful people become magnetic to good fortune because they have trained their minds to recognize and appreciate value. Ungrateful people repel the very blessings they desperately seek because they are unconsciously declaring that what they have is not enough. Every morning before your feet touch the floor, make it a sacred practice to count your blessings. Not in a rushed, mechanical way, but with the genuine emotion of someone who truly understands how much they have been given. Feel the gratitude in your chest. Let it fill your entire being. Thank the Creator for your beating heart, for your thinking mind, for the infinite possibilities that stretch before you. This daily practice will do something remarkable to your consciousness. It will shift your focus from what is wrong with your life to what is right with it. It will transform you from someone who sees obstacles into someone who sees opportunities. It will change you from a person who complains about their circumstances into a person who creates circumstances worth celebrating. But here is the most powerful aspect of gratitude that most people never discover. When you genuinely appreciate what you have, you automatically become worthy of more. You demonstrate to the universe that you are a good steward of blessings, that you recognize value when you see it, and that you can be trusted with greater abundance. The ungrateful mind is like a bucket with holes in the bottom. No matter how much you pour into it, it can never be filled. But the grateful heart is like rich soil that multiplies whatever seeds are planted in it. Every blessing acknowledged becomes the foundation for greater blessings to come. Tonight, before you close your eyes, instead of reviewing everything that went wrong, spend time appreciating everything that went right. Thank the Creator not only for the obvious blessings, but for the hidden ones, the challenges that made you stronger, the setbacks that redirected you towards something better, the closed doors that forced you to find the open ones. Make gratitude your way of life, not just your emergency prayer. Watch how quickly your entire world begins to transform when you approach each day from a place of appreciation rather than desperation. This is not about being satisfied with mediocrity. This is about building your success on the solid foundation of recognizing how blessed you already are. Number 3, transmutation of negative emotions. You carry the poison of old resentments in your bloodstream. You rehearse conversations with people who wronged you years ago, practicing the perfect comebacks for arguments that will never happen again. You have become a curator of grievances, cataloging every slight, every betrayal, every moment when someone failed to treat you with the respect you believe you deserved. And in this obsessive collection of emotional wounds, you have lost sight of a fundamental truth. Hatred hurts the hater far more than the hated. Every moment you spend nurturing anger toward another human being is a moment stolen from your own growth, your own peace, your own potential for greatness. You think you are punishing them with your resentment, but you are actually imprisoning yourself in a cell of your own making. The person you hate sleeps peacefully while you lie awake replaying their offenses. They move forward with their life while you remain chained to the past by your own bitterness. But what if I told you that every negative emotion you experience contains within it the seed of its own transformation? What if I revealed to you that hatred, properly understood and redirected, can become one of your greatest allies in the pursuit of inner freedom? The secret lies not in suppressing these emotions or pretending they do not exist, but in learning the ancient art of emotional transmutation. Picture in your mind a master alchemist working in his laboratory. He does not throw away the base metals because they are not gold. Instead, he applies heat, pressure, and precise knowledge to transform them into something precious. Your negative emotions are the base metals of your inner world, and you have the power to transmute them into the gold of wisdom, compassion, and strength. When someone treats you badly, when they lie to you, betray you, or attack your character, your natural response is to feel anger and hatred. This is normal. This is human. But here is where most people make their greatest mistake. They feed these emotions, nurture them, and allow them to grow until they consume everything good in their hearts. They become slaves to their own resentment. The person who has learned the secret of emotional transmutation takes a different path. When hatred arises, they do not fight it or deny it. Instead, they ask themselves a transformative question. What does this person's behavior reveal about their own inner pain? How much suffering must someone be experiencing to treat others with such cruelty? How lost must they be to behave in ways that make them so difficult to love? This shift in perspective is not about making excuses for bad behavior or allowing yourself to be mistreated. This is about reclaiming your emotional freedom by refusing to let another person's dysfunction control your inner state. When you transform hatred into compassion, you are not doing it for them. You are doing it for yourself. I learned this lesson during one of the most challenging periods of my life, when someone I trusted deeply betrayed that trust in a way that nearly destroyed everything I had worked for. The hatred I felt was so intense it consumed my thoughts day and night. I could barely concentrate on anything else. I was giving this person power over every aspect of my life, even though they were no longer even present in it. One evening, as I sat in my study wrestling with these emotions, I had a revelation that changed everything. I realized that this person's betrayal revealed not their strength but their weakness, not their superiority but their insecurity, not their wisdom but their ignorance. Instead of hating them for what they had done, I began to feel genuine pity for the fear and pain that must have driven them to such destructive actions. This shift from hatred to compassion did not happen overnight. It required conscious effort, daily practice, and the courage to choose a higher response even when every fiber of my being wanted to seek revenge. But the freedom that came from this transformation was worth every moment of struggle. I discovered that when you refuse to carry hatred in your heart, you create space for love, peace, and joy to flourish. The person who masters emotional transmutation becomes virtually unstoppable in life because they are no longer at the mercy of other people's behavior. They cannot be emotionally manipulated or controlled. They maintain their inner equilibrium regardless of external circumstances. They understand that their emotional state is their responsibility and their choice. This does not mean becoming passive or weak. It means becoming so emotionally strong that you can afford to be generous with your compassion. It means being so secure in your own worth that you do not need to diminish others to feel valuable. It means being so connected to your own purpose that you refuse to let anyone's dysfunction derail your destiny. Starting today, when you feel hatred rising in your chest, pause and ask yourself what pain this person must be carrying to behave as they do. Feel genuine compassion for their struggle. Refuse to add your own suffering to the equation by nurturing resentment. Transform the base metal of hatred into the gold of wisdom, and watch how quickly your entire emotional landscape begins to change. The person who can transmute negative emotions has discovered one of the most powerful secrets of human existence: the freedom to choose your response regardless of circumstances. Number 4, closing the door to the past. You are haunted by ghosts that exist only in your memory. Every failed relationship, every missed opportunity, every moment of humiliation plays on repeat in the theater of your mind like a movie you cannot turn off. You have become a prisoner of your own history, carrying the weight of yesterday into today and wondering why your steps feel so heavy. The past has become your most trusted advisor, whispering reasons why you should not try, should not hope, should not believe that this time can be different. But here is the brutal truth that no one wants to acknowledge. Your past is not your prison unless you choose to make it so. Every moment you spend reliving old failures is a moment stolen from creating new successes. Every second you waste analyzing what went wrong is a second you could have spent engineering what will go right. You have been using your precious mental energy to keep the dead past alive while your living future starves for attention. The mind that dwells in yesterday cannot create tomorrow. The heart that remains broken by old wounds cannot open to new possibilities. The spirit that defines itself by past failures cannot step into future victories. This is not psychology. This is the fundamental law of mental focus. You become what you think about most, and if you think most about your failures, you will create more of them. Imagine your mind as a magnificent mansion with countless rooms. In one wing of this mansion, you have carefully preserved every painful memory, every disappointment, every trauma. You visit these rooms daily, dusting off the old hurts, polishing the grievances, making sure that every detail of your suffering remains perfectly preserved. Meanwhile, the other wing of your mansion, the wing that holds your dreams and possibilities, sits empty and neglected because you spend all your time in the museum of your misery. The moment I understood this principle, I made one of the most difficult but liberating decisions of my life. I decided to close the door on my past failures completely. Not to forget them, for experience is a valuable teacher, but to stop living in them. I refused to allow the mistakes of yesterday to rob me of the miracles of tomorrow. This decision was not made once, but had to be renewed every single day. My mind, like yours, had been trained to find the familiar comfort of old pain. It was easier to explain my current struggles by pointing to past wounds than to take responsibility for creating a different future. But I discovered that the discipline required to close the door on the past was nothing compared to the prison of living there permanently. I learned to treat my past like a reference book rather than a residence. When I needed to extract a lesson from an old experience, I would consult it briefly and then put it back on the shelf. I refused to take up residence in yesterday's disappointments or camp out in the ruins of old dreams. I trained my mind to focus relentlessly on the present moment and the future I was creating. This practice required me to develop what I call selective amnesia. When my mind would try to drag me back into old failures, I would consciously redirect my thoughts to my current goals and possibilities. When people would remind me of my past mistakes, I would acknowledge them briefly and then immediately turn the conversation toward what I was building now. I became fiercely protective of my mental real estate, refusing to rent space in my consciousness to anything that did not serve my growth. The transformation was remarkable. As I stopped feeding energy to my past failures, they began to lose their power over me. As I focused more intently on my present opportunities, they began to multiply. As I invested my emotional capital in future possibilities, rather than past disappointments, my entire life began to shift toward those possibilities. But closing the door on the past is not just about forgetting the failures. It is also about refusing to live off the glory of past successes. I have known many people who became prisoners of their own achievements, constantly reliving their glory days instead of creating new ones. They became so attached to who they used to be that they stopped growing into who they could become. True freedom comes when you can look at your past with gratitude for the lessons, but without attachment to the outcomes. When you can acknowledge your history without being defined by it. When you can extract the wisdom from your experiences without carrying the emotional baggage that came with them. The future belongs to those who are willing to burn the bridges to their past failures, not the bridges to their past wisdom, but the bridges to their past limitations. Not the bridges to valuable lessons learned, but the bridges to excuses for not trying again. Not the bridges to healthy memories, but the bridges to unhealthy obsessions with what can never be changed. Starting today, make the conscious decision to evict the ghosts of your past from the mansion of your mind. Stop paying rent to live in yesterday's disappointments. Close the door firmly on what was and open it wide to what can be. Your future is not determined by your history. It is determined by the choices you make in this moment and every moment that follows. The person who learns to live fully in the present while building consciously toward the future has discovered the secret of turning their back on limitation and walking boldly toward their destiny. Number 5, success consciousness and mentality. You dress the part of your current circumstances. You speak the language of your present limitations. You carry yourself with the posture of someone who is still waiting for permission to succeed. Every morning you put on the costume of mediocrity and wonder why the world treats you like an extra in your own life story instead of the leading character you were born to be. But what if I told you that success is not something you achieve, but something you become? What if I revealed to you that every truly successful person discovered a secret that transformed them from the inside out before it transformed their circumstances? They learned to think, act, speak, and carry themselves as if they had already achieved their greatest goals, long before those goals became reality. This is what I call success consciousness, and it is the invisible force that separates those who dream from those who achieve. Success consciousness is not positive thinking or wishful fantasy. It is the deliberate cultivation of the mental, emotional, and physical habits of the person you are determined to become. It is living from your future instead of from your past. Most people wait for success to change how they feel about themselves. They believe that when they finally achieve their goals, then they will walk with confidence, speak with authority, and think with clarity. But this is backwards thinking that keeps millions trapped in cycles of mediocrity. The truth is, you must become successful in consciousness before you can become successful in circumstance. Picture in your mind a method actor preparing for the role of a lifetime. They do not wait until they are on stage to become the character. They immerse themselves so completely in the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of that character that the line between actor and role disappears. They speak as the character would speak, move as the character would move, think as the character would think, until the performance becomes as natural as breathing. This is exactly what you must do with your success consciousness. You must become so thoroughly immersed in the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of the successful person you are determined to become that there is no separation between who you are now and who you will be then. You must close the gap between your current reality and your desired reality by living from your future self instead of your present circumstances. I discovered this principle during one of the most challenging periods of my early career. I was struggling financially, my confidence was shattered, and I felt like a fraud pretending to teach success principles while my own life seemed to be falling apart. But instead of allowing my circumstances to dictate my consciousness, I made a radical decision. I began to study the greatest minds in history, not just to learn from their achievements, but to absorb their mental patterns. Every night before sleep, I would create detailed mental counsels with these great figures. I would imagine sitting in a room with Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Abraham Lincoln, and other titans of achievement. I would present my challenges to them and listen carefully to their advice. I would observe how they thought, how they approached problems, how they carried themselves in the face of adversity. This practice was not mere fantasy or escapism, it was a deliberate reprogramming of my subconscious mind. By consistently exposing my thoughts to the mental patterns of greatness, I began to think as they thought, approach challenges as they approached them, and maintain confidence as they maintained it. Gradually, imperceptibly, my consciousness began to shift from that of a struggling individual to that of someone destined for achievement. But success consciousness goes beyond mental exercises. It must be expressed in every aspect of your daily life. The successful person you are becoming would not dress carelessly, speak negatively, or carry themselves with poor posture. They would not waste time on trivial pursuits, engage in gossip, or surround themselves with people who drain their energy. They would treat their time, their relationships, and their opportunities with the respect they deserve. This is not about pretending to be someone you are not. This is about becoming who you truly are, underneath all the layers of conditioning, fear, and limitation that have accumulated over the years. Your success consciousness is not a mask you put on, it is the authentic self you uncover when you stop living beneath your potential. The transformation begins the moment you start asking yourself a different question. Instead of asking what someone in your current situation would do, start asking what someone who has already achieved your goals would do. How would they handle this challenge? How would they respond to this opportunity? How would they invest their time today? Every decision you make from this elevated consciousness becomes a building block in the foundation of your future success. Every time you choose the response of your successful future self over the reaction of your struggling current self, you take another step toward closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. This practice requires courage because it means acting successful before you have proof that you deserve to be. It means speaking with confidence before you feel confident, taking calculated risks before you feel ready, and carrying yourself with dignity even when your bank account suggests otherwise. But here is the miracle of success consciousness. The moment you begin to consistently think, act, and carry yourself as a successful person, the universe begins to treat you as one. Opportunities that were invisible to your mediocre consciousness become obvious to your success consciousness. People begin to respond to the energy you project. Circumstances begin to align with the mental image you consistently hold. You are not waiting for permission to be successful. You are not waiting for circumstances to improve. You are not waiting for someone else to recognize your potential. You are claiming your success consciousness right now, in this moment, and letting it transform everything that follows. Number 6, overcoming through persistence. You have a graveyard in your mind filled with the tombstones of abandoned dreams, each one marked with the epitaph, "I tried," or "It was too hard," or "Maybe next time." You have become an expert at starting but a novice at finishing. You have mastered the art of excitement but failed to develop the discipline of endurance. And in your collection of noble attempts and reasonable excuses, you have lost sight of the most powerful force in human achievement, the refusal to accept no as a final answer. Most people believe that talent is the great differentiator between success and failure. They think that intelligence, education, or connections determine who rises and who falls. But after studying thousands of successful individuals, I can tell you with absolute certainty that the one quality that separates achievers from dreamers is not brilliance or luck. It is persistence. It is the stubborn, relentless, almost irrational commitment to continue when every logical reason suggests you should quit. Persistence is not just pushing through obstacles. It is the transformation of obstacles into stepping stones. It is the alchemy that turns temporary defeat into permanent victory. It is the secret weapon of ordinary people who achieve extraordinary results, not because they are more gifted, but because they are more determined to persist until success has no choice but to surrender to their will. Think of persistence as the sculptor's chisel working on a block of marble. The first strike appears to accomplish nothing. The 100th strike seems equally futile. But the sculptor knows something that the casual observer does not. Each strike is not separate from the others. Each blow is part of a cumulative force that will eventually reveal the masterpiece hidden within the stone. Success is not created by any single effort, but by the relentless accumulation of persistent action. I learned this lesson in the most visceral way possible during a speaking engagement in Mississippi when I was struck with what the doctor later told me was one of the worst cases of influenza he had ever seen. My fever was so high that I was hallucinating. My body was racked with pain, and I could barely stand without assistance. Any reasonable person would have canceled the engagement and returned home to recover. But I had made a commitment to those people, and more importantly, I had made a commitment to myself to never use circumstances as an excuse for failing to keep my word. Against the urgent advice of the local physician, I took the stage that night. For 2 hours, I delivered one of the most powerful lectures of my life, drawing strength from a source that had nothing to do with my physical condition and everything to do with my mental determination. The audience that night had no idea they were witnessing a masterclass in persistence. They saw a speaker who was fully present and completely committed to serving them. They could not see the battle raging inside my body or the supreme effort of will required to maintain focus despite the overwhelming desire to collapse. But I knew, and that knowledge became a cornerstone of my understanding of what human beings can accomplish when they refuse to accept limitations. This was not an isolated incident. Throughout my career, I faced rejection after rejection from editors who refused to publish my work, businessmen who dismissed my ideas, and critics who predicted my failure. Each no was an invitation to quit, a reasonable excuse to pursue an easier path. But I had trained my mind to hear no as not yet, and to interpret rejection as redirection toward a better opportunity. The most difficult client I ever pursued told me no 17 times before finally agreeing to meet with me. Lesser persistence would have accepted the first no, or perhaps the third, or maybe even the 10th. But I understood something that most people never learn. When you have a burning desire backed by a definite purpose, every obstacle becomes fuel for your determination rather than a reason for your defeat. This is the mindset that you must cultivate if you want to join the ranks of those who achieve the impossible. You must train yourself to see temporary defeat, not as permanent failure, but as valuable education. You must learn to interpret closed doors not as final verdicts, but as redirections toward the door that is meant to open for you. You must develop the mental toughness to persist when persistence seems pointless, and to continue when continuation seems impossible. But persistence without purpose is merely stubbornness. Persistence without a plan is just spinning your wheels. The kind of persistence that creates miracles is intelligent, strategic, and adaptable. It knows when to push harder and when to pivot. It learns from each setback and adjusts its approach accordingly. It maintains the goal while remaining flexible about the method. The person who masters this principle develops what I call a success complex. They become psychologically incapable of accepting permanent defeat because they know that every failure is temporary if they refuse to quit. They understand that success is not about avoiding obstacles, but about developing the character to overcome them. They realize that the universe rewards persistence with opportunities that are invisible to those who give up too easily. This does not mean being blind to reality or ignoring wise counsel. It means maintaining faith in your ultimate success while being intelligent about your immediate tactics. It means being willing to change your approach as many times as necessary while never changing your determination to reach your destination. The next time you face an obstacle that seems insurmountable, remember this truth. The obstacle is not there to stop you, but to strengthen you. It is not there to defeat you, but to develop you. It is not there to end your story, but to add a chapter that will make your eventual victory even more meaningful. Persistence is not just a strategy for achieving goals. It is the foundation of character, the birthplace of confidence, and the proving ground of your faith in yourself. The person who learns to persist through any circumstance has discovered the secret of turning temporary defeat into permanent victory. Number 7, failure as lack of purpose. You drift through your days like a ship without a compass, blown about by the winds of circumstance, wondering why you never seem to reach any meaningful destination. You mistake activity for achievement, busyness for progress, and motion for momentum. At the end of each week, each month, each year, you look back and struggle to identify what you actually accomplished because you never clearly defined what you were trying to achieve in the first place. Here is a truth that will either liberate you or disturb you. Failure requires no planning whatsoever. Failure is automatic. It is the default setting of an undirected life. Failure happens to everyone who does not consciously and deliberately choose success. While success demands purpose, planning, persistence, and precise action, failure asks for nothing more than the absence of these qualities. Think about this carefully. You do not have to study how to fail. You do not need to develop skills for mediocrity. You do not require training in disappointment or education in limitation. These outcomes arrive naturally and inevitably when you fail to take conscious control of your thoughts, your choices, and your direction. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the absence of success. But success is an entirely different matter. Success is unnatural. It requires you to swim against the current of least resistance. It demands that you rise above the gravitational pull of mediocrity that affects everyone around you. Success happens only when you have a definite purpose that burns so clearly in your mind that it guides every decision, every action, every moment of your waking life. Purpose is not just knowing what you want. Purpose is knowing what you want with such crystalline clarity and burning desire that you can see it, feel it, taste it, and live it in your imagination before it becomes real in your experience. Purpose is not a vague wish or a general direction. It is a specific destination with a specific timeline and a specific plan for arrival. I have observed thousands of people over the decades, and I can tell you without hesitation that those who fail have one characteristic in common. They lack definiteness of purpose. They may have dreams, wishes, hopes, and general aspirations, but they do not have the clear, specific, burning desire that transforms dreams into plans and plans into reality. The person without definite purpose becomes a wanderer in the wilderness of possibilities, attracted to every opportunity but committed to none. They start projects they do not finish. They pursue goals they do not really want. They make decisions based on the opinions of others rather than the clarity of their own vision. They become victims of every passing influence because they have no internal compass strong enough to keep them on course. But here is what makes this tragedy even more profound. Most people live their entire lives without ever discovering their true purpose. They spend decades climbing ladders only to discover those ladders were leaning against the wrong walls. They achieve goals that bring them no satisfaction because those goals were chosen by default rather than by design. They reach the end of their lives wondering what might have been if they had only known what they really wanted. The development of definiteness of purpose is not a luxury for the ambitious. It is a necessity for anyone who wants to live a life of meaning and achievement. Without it, you will be tossed about by every opinion, every trend, every temporary setback. With it, you become like a guided missile, adjusting your course as necessary, but never losing sight of your target. Your definite purpose must be more than a goal. It must be a calling that pulls you forward, even when circumstances push you backward. It must be specific enough to guide your daily decisions, but inspiring enough to sustain you through years of effort. It must be your own purpose, not one inherited from your parents, borrowed from your friends, or imposed by society. But having a definite purpose is only the beginning. That purpose must be supported by a definite plan. Too many people know what they want, but have no clear strategy for getting it. They expect their desires to materialize through hope, rather than through organized effort. They mistake wishful thinking for practical planning. Your plan must be written down, reviewed regularly, and adjusted as necessary. It must include specific steps, specific timelines, and specific measurements of progress. It must anticipate obstacles and include strategies for overcoming them. It must be realistic enough to be achievable, but ambitious enough to inspire extraordinary effort. The person who combines definite purpose with a definite plan becomes virtually unstoppable. They may face temporary setbacks, but they cannot experience permanent defeat because they know exactly where they are going and exactly how they plan to get there. Every obstacle becomes a puzzle to solve rather than a reason to quit. Every setback becomes a lesson rather than a defeat. This clarity of purpose also serves as a powerful filter for all the distractions, temptations, and side roads that will try to divert your attention. When someone asks for your time, you can evaluate their request against your definite purpose. When an opportunity presents itself, you can measure it against your plan. When fear or doubt tries to paralyze you, you can remind yourself of your burning desire and continue moving forward. But perhaps most importantly, definiteness of purpose transforms you from a passive observer of your life into an active creator of your destiny. Instead of wondering what will happen to you, you begin to decide what you will make happen. Instead of hoping for favorable circumstances, you begin to create them. Instead of waiting for permission or perfect conditions, you begin to take action based on your own clear vision. The moment you commit to a definite purpose backed by a definite plan, you join the small percentage of people who actually control their own lives. You stop being a victim of circumstance and become a force of determination. You stop reacting to life and start creating it. What is your definite purpose? Can you state it clearly in one sentence? Can you see it vividly in your mind? Does it inspire you to take action even when action is difficult? If you cannot answer these questions with absolute certainty, then you have discovered the real reason why success has remained elusive. But now you also know exactly what you must do to change everything. Number 8, final teachings and practical application. You now stand at the crossroads between the person you have been and the person you can become. Behind you lies a trail of good intentions, half-completed projects, and dreams deferred. Ahead of you stretches a path toward mastery, achievement, and the fulfillment of your highest potential. The choice you make in this moment will echo through every day that remains in your life. But knowledge without application is merely sophisticated ignorance. Understanding without action is just educated procrastination. You can memorize every principle of success, quote every great philosopher, and discuss every strategy of achievement, but until you begin to live these truths consistently and deliberately, they remain nothing more than intellectual entertainment. The undisciplined person reveals themselves through 1,000 small choices that seem insignificant in isolation but create devastating consequences when compounded over time. They eat foods that rob them of energy and then wonder why they lack vitality. They fill their minds with gossip, complaints, and negativity, and then wonder why they attract negative circumstances. They surround themselves with people who drain their ambition and then wonder why their dreams seem to fade with each passing year. They criticize more than they create, complain more than they contribute, and consume more than they produce. They spend their mental energy on what is wrong with the world instead of what they can make right in their own lives. They become experts at identifying problems, but amateurs at creating solutions. They develop an impressive vocabulary for describing obstacles, but remain speechless when asked about their plans for overcoming them. But the disciplined person understands that success is not a single dramatic event, but the natural result of excellent daily habits sustained over time. They treat their body as the temple that houses their dreams, fueling it with foods that enhance their performance rather than diminish it. They guard their mental environment as carefully as they would guard their children, allowing only thoughts and influences that support their growth and achievement. They choose their associations with the wisdom of a master gardener, knowing that they will inevitably become like the people with whom they spend the most time. They seek out mentors who have achieved what they want to achieve. They read books that challenge their thinking and expand their possibilities. They invest in their own education with the understanding that learning is not an event, but a lifelong process. Most importantly, they take complete responsibility for their circumstances, their choices, and their results. They understand that blaming others for their problems is the same as giving others control over their solutions. They know that making excuses might preserve their ego in the short term but destroys their potential in the long term. They would rather face the temporary discomfort of taking responsibility than the permanent pain of regret. The disciplined person also understands the power of compound interest as it applies not just to money but to every area of life. They know that small daily improvements in their knowledge, their skills, their relationships, and their habits will create exponential results over time. They are willing to sacrifice immediate gratification for long-term satisfaction because they understand that everything they want is on the other side of discipline. This means waking up when they plan to wake up instead of when they feel like waking up. It means doing the work they committed to do regardless of whether they feel motivated. It means keeping promises to themselves as faithfully as they keep promises to others. It means treating their time as the precious and irreplaceable resource it is. But discipline is not self-punishment or joyless rigidity. True discipline is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It is the tool that transforms dreams into reality. It is the difference between hoping for a better life and creating one. When you understand discipline in this way, it becomes not a burden you carry, but a power you wield. The moment you make the decision to become a disciplined person, you will face immediate resistance from your old patterns of thinking and behaving. Your comfort zone will fight to keep you trapped in familiarity. Your fears will whisper reasons why you should wait until conditions are perfect. Your doubts will remind you of every past failure as evidence that this time will be no different. This resistance is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is proof that you are on the right one. Growth always feels uncomfortable because it requires you to stretch beyond your current limitations. Change always feels threatening because it demands that you release your grip on the known in order to reach for the unknown. But here is what I have learned after decades of studying human potential and watching countless individuals transform their lives. The pain of discipline weighs ounces while the pain of regret weighs tons. The temporary discomfort of doing what you should do is nothing compared to the permanent anguish of knowing you could have been more but chose to be less. Every morning you wake up with the same choice that has been available to human beings throughout history. You can live by design or by default. You can be the author of your story or a character in someone else's drama. You can take control of your thoughts, your habits, your associations, and your choices, or you can allow them to control you. The principles I have shared with you are not theories to be debated, but tools to be used. They have been tested in the laboratories of thousands of lives and proven effective by countless individuals who refuse to accept mediocrity as their permanent address. But these principles only work if you work them. They only produce results if you apply them consistently and persistently until they become as natural as breathing. Starting today, right now, in this moment, you have the opportunity to become the person you were meant to be. Not the person your circumstances suggest you should be, not the person your past indicates you will be, but the person your potential demands you become. The only question that remains is this: what will you do with this knowledge? Will you allow it to inspire you temporarily and then return to your old patterns? Or will you use it to ignite a transformation so complete and so powerful that a year from now you will barely recognize the person you used to be? Your destiny is not determined by your past. It is created by your choices. Choose wisely, choose boldly, choose now.